Hello and welcome to the Rock and Road to Success. Today I have the honor of hosting the Cynical CEO herself, Diana Elenkova. How are you doing, Diana? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gabe. The honor is completely mine. I didn't expect the invitation, but I accepted with great pleasure. It's a good show. I love it.
Oh, come on, the pleasure is mine. So, where did the idea of the Cynical CEO come from? I know you have a lot of experience with leadership and being on a C-level type of role, and we want to go into all of that, but the cynical part, I think, is the most interesting, the most different. So, how did this idea come to life?
Well, uh, I was hired as a CEO of a local branch of a Swiss company. So I've been in the role for 5 years, enterprise CEO, which didn't really fit me that well because I'm quite a creative person, proud with disrupting the status quo as a leader, and proud with really pushing and moving forward when it comes to interactions with senior management. And let's say I was the diversity in our team. I was very for a while I was actually the only woman in senior management. Uh, the youngest. I was hired at age 35, and my communication style, let's say, rose a lot of eyebrows, right? So I am a bit of difficult when I'm discussing strategy that impacts my team. And I wouldn't be very agreeable if I deem the strategy not really positive for my team. So that in combination with, I really loved one YouTuber, the Cynical Brit. Unfortunately, he passed away from cancer. So the Cynical CEO is born part from, my edgy communication style with my peers, and in the loving memory of this YouTuber that I miss so much. That is.
Wow, that's wholesome that you wanted to make an homage to your favorite YouTuber. And how did your communication style fare with the Swiss? Because they're used to being very like tight with how they do things, and you are more on a style of being more direct, more blunt sometimes, or
Yeah.
how did this work out with them since they are so trying to be right all the time or being super polite?
I am normally very punctual. Actually, there was a clash of cultures, right? There was a cultural clash, and that was obvious. So from them, I learned to be punctual. But they are also very soft people who care about the comfort of everyone else. They care about the comfort of the team. They care about the comfort of their peers. So everything that was challenging was in a very roundabout way. And then there comes me who says, no, we are not doing this. And everyone is like, we normally challenge with a question. We don't give hard no's. Or I would say something like, this is very stupid. And then the person would hear, you're very stupid, even though I'm referring to the idea, not the person. And I believe that the speed with which I am used to move, it's simply because Bulgaria is not very stable country politically or economically speaking. So I'm very used to quickly, make decisions in ever-changing circumstances. While my colleagues were very used to very stable and predictable economy, that is a wealthy economy. So whenever something happened, I was like, okay, we are doing this, and they're like, wait, let's think about it, let's analyze. And I'm like, come on, people, we don't have time to analyze, right? Let's do it now, let's test it. So there were some clashes between me and my colleagues, and they were always resolved in in a feedback exchange way. So I've heard that I had strong opinions, but I'm also very pleasant to work with once you get used to my style. So it wasn't a constant clash, it wasn't constant arguments, but I would never ever be silent about an opinion, which sometimes made my colleagues' lives difficult.
Yeah, you tell them how it is, and maybe they weren't so used to listening to that kind of feedback, I guess.
Yes, yes, very
And
direct.
about
I
the,
mean,
yeah, sure.
yeah, I mean, when you normally, so what I got from the Swiss culture is that you normally don't really uh, say I disagree. You say I disagree and then challenge with a question and listen very carefully. And my style would be I hear something, I assume where it's going, which is not the best way, by the way, to do listening. But there are some patterns when you are used to, when you have the experience in the field. So whenever I hear the pattern, I'm like, no, let me stop you right here. We are not doing this. And then it was like, okay, but let's really talk about it and discuss it. And the decision making is completely different because they would actually discuss until they get everyone on board, which works for a team size of 100, and it's a nightmare. And when are 1040 people, 2000 people, you cannot really get everyone on board in that short period of time. So yeah, this is where we clash the most.
And do you think coming from Eastern Europe and being used to an environment that's more difficult or more prone to constant changes, like you said before, with all of the political instability and economic
Mm.
instability that I am also very used to because I'm from Brazil. So I
Yeah.
know what you mean when you talk about that kind of thing. And like dealing with these people in Central Europe, in Switzerland, Germany, the Nordic countries that are used to these very stable economies or the welfare state that's very, it's like you're always on guardrails. Um, do you think there was a lot of clashes in terms of strategy, in terms of thinking about how to deal with things in business?
Yes and no, because I had quite a lot of autonomy, to be very frank. My colleagues were nice. They were nice. It's just that Central Europe and Central European locations, there was a time they were moving faster than the rest of the locations. And yes, there were discussions, as my Swiss colleagues would say. Um, but practically, I remember we had one conversation with one of my colleagues, and he was saying we need more hungry sales. And I was like, why are you looking for hungry salespeople in countries who are not, which are not hungry, right? So there is a certain difference in the drive and in the speed and in the decisions that you make when you live in crisis. One of my good colleagues from Switzerland, back then he was the CEO of Switzerland, he was like, Diana, how come you're very good in crisis? And I'm like, I live in Bulgaria, that's Central Europe. My everyday life is a crisis. You don't have any, how to say, other chance than to learn to be good in crisis, because otherwise you cannot really stay above the water. That's how it is. Again, I'm not saying those were bad people or incompetent people. I'm not saying anything of the kind. I'm just saying that uh, we clashed because I wanted to move full speed ahead, and they wanted to practically do the checks of the risks and the brakes and stuff. And at some point, I got actually tired of having constantly to persuade and convince that we can move faster with minimum risk.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to go straight ahead, and it gets a bit frustrating when people don't let you do what you know you should, right? I I also worked for a while in Germany, and they were planning things like 6 months ahead, 1 year ahead. And if they were doing this in Brazil, that probably wouldn't pan out very well because things change so quick. And
Mm.
since we were talking about those times of crisis or times of things that come unexpectedly, lately, you've written something that I found very interesting. You wrote a post about TNT story when there were some explosions in Sofia. And
Yes,
could you
they
tell
were.
that story, please?
So practically, my career spans. My friends talk about my career like this. Diana started from the heavy metal to dynamite to high tech. So I started working full time in my third year in university, and I started at a metallurgical plant. That was I started as an interpreter from English, and then because I was studying in technical university, they made me a leader of a team, thermal insulation plates, at the ridiculous age of 23, and it was very very dirty job, to be very frank. The place was very dirty. The people were very direct, but really direct in a sense that they will tell you you suck as a boss, so get out of my face and really let me do my job, which is a healthy dynamic as well. I don't judge. It's just very different than a corporate job, right? And then I moved to help actually my aunt, who was a first degree certified engineer, to design, chains, projects, and explosives. So what happened is that there were military storages 20 kilometers away from the city, and they were containing some shells, some ballistic missiles, but also 20 tons of TNT. And it was a very strange morning because when TNT burns, it either burns really silently, so I don't know how do you call this thing in English when the wood is actually dying down by the fire, right? Or it burns
Hmm.
explosively, and it started burning explosively. And I woke up. My door on my bedroom was doing this and bangs, bangs, bangs. So I rushed to the office, and back then there were very, very few people who actually could deal with explosives at the territory of Bulgaria because um, they weren't any robots. I really hope now they have robots. But when you design something for demolishment, you normally would chain and stack detonators, right? And they have milliseconds of delay. And their job was to calculate that milliseconds of delay, to lay down the chain and push the big red button, right? But if a detonator on that chain malfunction, they have to enter the old building and check what's happening, and that is a very, very little risk. So they were enormously well paid, very rich, but also very few candidates for the job because that is very little profession after all, or was back then. So, so I knew that whatever happens, civil defense will call them because there were very few experts like them in the army. And I was like, okay, I have to go to the office. And on the next day, I was bidding, right? So we had to do the bid. So I was like, okay, something is happening. I cannot help. I don't have the knowledge or experience to help with the explosions. There is absolutely no value in sitting and saying, "Hey, are we gonna die? Is it dangerous? Is it whatever?" So I was like, "Okay, I'll finish my bid." And in that bit, there were always formulas in which you calculate the blast radius because you have to check what part of the region you need to evacuate when
Hmm.
you're blasting an old building. So so I was like, okay, but now I'm in these situations. Let me really check with the formula if the blast waves will actually reach our office because there was a warning, stay out of the windows, whatever. And I was like literally taking some variables, substituting in the formula, and I was like, oh, okay, it can barely reach the office. I must be totally safe. So I continue doing with my bit, right? And then my work bestie, he was also first degree engineer. He was like, Diana, the hell are you doing? Get out of the window, get away from there. And I'm like, what do you mean the hell am I doing? I'm trying to make us some money because this is the only way that I can help, right? And he's like, listen to me very carefully. every line of the safety instructions of working with explosive was written in blood. And when a field engineers tell you move away from the window or move away from whatever you move, and he was like move, and I'm like okay, because I jump, he never yelled at me or something, so I jump, and I'm like, you know what, I could make us some money, I could do that bit, that's an important work I'm doing. I'm like, should I salute him or something to, he's stressed, he might be caught on site, I don't want to yell at him back or something, but should I somehow show him that I disagree with him interrupting my job? I just checked, with the formula. It is safe. So practically, I'm, to me inward,
Wow.
and I'm like watching, and I was so shaken because it wasn't that spectacular than the movies do the explosions, right? But it was broken glass everywhere around, and I was like, that could fall on my stupid head. I can't believe that I actually wanted to finish a bit and argue with my colleague to stay where I am because it wasn't a laptop back then. There were desktop computers, right? And I'm like saying, but what's going on? I'm like, but the formula. And he's like, Diana, formulas really, really don't mean shit when TNT decides to misbehave. And then he told me something I'll never forget. He was like, you know, um, it's a craft like any other. You have to be in it for a while to get it right. And I did quit a year later because I didn't want to actually certify myself and continue that line of work and move to IT. And IT has less little risk than that industry. But I think that's where I formed a belief. Never trust the books, never trust the formulas, trust people who really, really did something with their hands, who have the experience, who know the domain in and out, because you can never perfectly transfer what's written in a book and try it once and expect that it will be successful. So yeah, that's the story.
Wow. So I can only imagine how much adrenaline you might must have felt that day when the windows simply exploded. Like you said, not like in the movies that we think of that big explosion, but being like you were sitting on your desk and then a few seconds later you're up and the window explodes. That must have been
Yeah,
such an adrenaline rush. And yeah, I think you're right when you say that there is a lot of knowledge that it's hard to transfer. It's hard to teach someone else because it becomes so ingrained when you do it a bunch of times for a bunch of years that it's second nature to you. So you can even really transfer or transcribe it to a book because you
mm,
do so many things subconsciously in your brain that you're not sure, like, how can I teach her this if it's something that I don't even realize I'm doing. But
yeah.
when you decided to go to tech because it was a bit safer in a very physical sense. But and it's funny because like you said
It was
before as
well
well,
paid
you
without
started
risk. It was well paid without the imminent risk of dying, to be very frank. But yeah, sorry to interrupt.
yeah, because you started with heavy metal. That's also something that's relatively um I wouldn't say unsafe, but it's not the easiest of conditions to work
Mm,
with metallurgical
yes.
plants, and it's a lot of heat, a lot of byproducts, and it's a bit unsafe. And I guess there weren't so many women, especially in leadership positions there. And then you went to the explosive thing that's also very dangerous. And then you went to tech that's much safer, but at the same time, it's a more male-dominated space as well. So being a woman and going to these places and becoming those guys' boss, how was that for you? Or were you always like that? Were you like the older sister in your family or the child that always sort of had this in you, or did you have to grow into it?
You have to understand that for Bulgaria, that is not that big of a problem, and I will explain. I will explain why. I have another story I can tell. So I called this problem the problem of the five whys. And a lady came to me, one of the software engineers I worked with. She came to me and asked, Diana, they want to put me on some diversity thing as a female engineer, and as a female engineer, and she sounds really, really offended. And I'm like, oh, what's happening? And she's like, female, I'm an engineer. What does my gender matters? And I'm like, look, we don't feel it that much in Bulgaria, but there are less women in software engineering than there are women in Bulgaria. And by the way, Bulgaria leads Europe in women in tech statistically. That's one thing we are good at. And she's like, okay, why? And then I'm like, okay, it's a slippery slope from now on because I'm not very prepared to lead that conversation, right? So I'm like, well, because, women are nurtured from very young age to take a humanitarian path. She's like, okay, why? And I'm like, well, because it's considered that maybe engineering is a male job or was out norms. And she's like, okay, but why? It goes from curiosity to already shock. And I'm like, I don't know now what to tell you because I can either call my colleagues stupid, and my colleagues are really kind and, as I said, very caring people from Western Europe, or I have to glorify communism because in communism, basically being different was something that practically could give you capital punishment, right? So equality was not a problem, and equality was so much not a problem that I believe it did some hurtful things. For example, my aunt was sent in uranium. How do you call it? Plutonium mining facility because she was the chief engineer, and she was 9 months pregnant. So
Oh,
that's extreme equality. I don't believe we should strive for. So in terms of how did I took the path of that is connected to heavy working conditions and solving problems and engineering, I have to admit that I come from a privileged country where equality is more of a habit than for the countries that haven't been on the other side of the Iron Curtain. And again, I don't want to glorify communism because it's a horrific and very bloody regime full of censorship and full of very, very horrific stories. But it is also a fact that due to 45 years of women not being encouraged, being judged if they don't work equally with the men, kind of shaped different habits and different societal norms around that. And then my father's family were scientists. They were in engineering, chemistry, all of them. My mom was a CFO, so I
wow.
I I was kind of nurtured and grew up in an environment when the road was pretty much go forward, right? Go solve problems, go help people, and then go make money and go forward with it. So I hate to say it, but I was lucky. That's it.
No, that's awesome. I think we could go deeper into this because it's a very different perspective from what we get in more Western countries like the US or Western Europe. And when you were born, communism was still a thing or it was kind of phasing out. So you did get into contact with people that really lived through this, like your parents, your grandparents. And so you have a perspective that not many people have. And I think this is very interesting to see like the differences because you guys actually know how it is living under a that to a more capitalist or transitioning to a more capitalist society in the last decades. And at the same time, I got very interested into knowing more about your upbringing because, as you said, your family was full of scientists, engineers, your mom was a CEO or CFO. And how was this like in your home? Did you told me before that you loved books as a kid? Was this because of their influence? Did they always give you a bunch of books and tell you to go and do some scientific things, do experiments? How was growing up under these circumstances?
Oh, okay. A lot to answer here. Let me first describe how fading out of communism felt like and my brightest memory of it, because I think it's an interesting story. So, my grandpa was training the national volleyball team, and he is really the only coach so far that has a silver medal. But he was also the highest academic title, whatever there is in the country. So he was really, really high. So when Chernobyl happened, I was very little, but I heard him screaming on the phone, "This is a crime, and we are doing a crime." And then he told my mother, "Don't you dare take the kid outside." The next day was manifestation, so some celebration of the Communist Party, and it is very dangerous. It can have effect. They don't want to disclose it because the mighty Russia and the mighty party can't be wrong. So what my mom does, she starts going. It was very scary for me to process that because I was very little. I couldn't process it, and I had to fill the gaps of what happened back then with her. She starts knocking. There is no internet, no mobile phones, from door to door, to the neighbors, to everything she knows. And she said, "Don't go outside. Put some wet sheets on the windows. There is a radioactive cloud that is traveling our side." And everyone would look at her and say, Elenkova, so this is the, the family name, "You're totally crazy. The mighty party is taking care of us." They would never expose her to a danger. On the
Wow.
next day, whole Bulgaria went out on a manifestation, and radioactive rain practically was pouring over people because communists and communistic party didn't want to actually tell people, "Hey, it's very dangerous. There is serious biohazard there." So this is one of the very bright stories I actually used to describe all the brainwashing and all the silence and all the privileges, hidden privileges in that. So yeah. As for the books, my mother and my father were divorced. They were good friends, but they were divorced. So I would spend the weekend with my father and my father's family, and then the week with mom. So my father decided to teach me to read because I was otherwise annoying. And on Saturday and Sunday, everybody at home was doing research or preparing lectures or whatever. So I started reading very little, and I'm really, really grateful to my parents because there was an enormous library at home and absolutely no curation. I could pick a book and read whatever. And though I wouldn't understand it, though I wouldn't really, how to say, could grasp actually each and every plot, right? Because if you're a 5-year-old kid, you don't really understand the deep historical events that happened, whatever. But still, I could read everything, and I really loved it because it was passing the time in a way that was very fun. There was no internet. There were, some toys, but then again, you don't have all the toys that you would like because, iron curtains. So, it was difficult to import that much of a fancy toys, and then books were really, really something that I enjoyed quite a lot on my entire childhood. I would even be in a place where I would go for lunch or dinner, and I will read and eat. And my mom would be like, "Now, should I tell you to leave the book? Should I not tell you to leave the book?" She was in a dilemma. And from the science perspective, what my grandfather actually really insisted I learn, he was constantly asking me to ask him questions. That's it. No experiments, no deep dive in chemistry, but he was really, really insisting on asking questions, asking the right questions, and really challenging everyone's opinion if they are, without any grounds. So that's it. That was my upbringing.
And were you a very curious child and teenager?
Curious child? Yes. Teenager, I think in my rebellion phase, I really said to my father's family, fuck off. I will not be that snobbish and I will not be that, how to say. And by snobbish, I mean intellectually snobbish, right? Because they were very careful with picking their friends and their circle. And as a teenager, during my rebellion, I even stopped visiting them for a while. And then my mom actually, she was working quite a lot. It was a crisis because right after communism, there was an economic crisis, very, very big recession. So she was working a lot and she was never home. So during when I was a teenager, basically I had my classmates and we are friends till today because everyone's parents were very busy and trying to work over the crisis, right? So it was we practically found family at school. And now every one of us is all over the world. Some of my classmates went to Germany, some to the US, some to the United Arab Emirates. But it's like, if I pick the phone and say, "Hey, I need help," probably they will pick a plane and vice versa. So yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. These relationships we have with people from school and from our younger years. And since you were talking about them going to many other countries, is there a very big brain drain in Bulgaria, do you think?
No, not in IT, no. And I can tell you why, because average salary, the average salary of a person working as a software engineer or taking a leadership role is four times more than the average salary of the country. So I was living very luxurious life without the need to move anyone. If you're in any other profession, then yes, people would go and really try to find better life. But when it comes to software engineering, when it comes to IT, practically what we saw was that software engineers were coming back because the money buying power of an engineer in Sofia was equal to the money buying power of an engineer in London. But unlike London, because I traveled a lot of work, uh, you could, live really, really good life here. They were,
And
yeah.
sure. No, no, sure. Go ahead.
A UK client once asked me to relocate, and I was like, they wanted to hire me and help me relocate it in London because they assumed that, I would like to live in England, in the UK, more than I would like to live in Bulgaria. But then I was like, look, in Bulgaria, I have a cleaning lady, which I love. She's like my second mom. I have, nail artist. I have a hairdresser, and I visit them, gave last time at least twice a month. I have a massagist. I have a therapist. I have, quite a lot of people. Could I afford it with a salary that and I own my apartment? That's, also an asset. And they were like, but that's a life that actually our CEO can afford, but not everyone working here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I will consult you remotely. And then, and then, and then do like that. Cost of living matters. And, depending on the industry that you chose, you can also move around the world. This is why I love it. It's now global, so you can practically maximize your income without too much of stress, let's say.
Yeah, nowadays it's much easier to do this if you have clients in the US or in other countries with a strong currency and you're living in a country that's a bit cheaper, like here in Latin America or in Eastern Europe, you can have a totally different lifestyle with a few $1,000s a month. You can live like a king.
Yes.
Well, if you earn like $3,000 a month in the US, you're pretty much poor. But if you earn this in Brazil, you're a very decent style of life, like maybe even upper middle class, like $3 to $4,000 a month. And Yeah, you get access to all of these services that they don't have because they're so expensive that most people can't go to the
Yes.
salon every 2 weeks or have a cleaning lady. And here in Brazil, it's also very, very normal for middle class families to be able to afford that kind of thing. But yeah, in Western Europe and the US, pretty much only the top very, very rich people can afford some of these things and not even all of them.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
And the last time we talked, you told me that you are used to making very, very big deals, that when you had a deal for less than $1 million, it pretty much didn't count. But of course, the first time is always special. So how was it the first time that you got one of those very huge deals, and how did you feel? How was the story?
Can't remember the first actually, but I told you last time, so it's very easy to make big money. My first job in IT was in a system integrator, so we were having the highest level of partnerships with Oracle, with VMware, with Hewlett Packard, with Cisco, and when you sell in the enterprise, those products that the vendors were offering were really, really big. So I was joking that, first of all, those are very big brands. If I tell you Microsoft, you don't Google who are they, right? So they have the branding. And then I had the connections, all the connections of my CEO, my first CEO, Nikki. So I didn't even have to develop a network or generate leads. I really, all I had to do is go and talk to people and map problems to the solutions that we offered, right? And the first deal that I did remember was practically one very, very difficult bit, because it looked like impossible to beat. There were very, very specific conditions that very, very few, if not only one company can comply to if they were bidding alone. So I remember that I was very, very angry and decided that we are going to bid. And my boss said, Nikki then said, okay, go for it, whatever. And then I had to collect to comply just with legal compliance 12 subcontractors. 12. So it
Well,
was very heavy work, very tight deadline of the bid, very, very intense negotiations because I don't know if you can imagine, there is you bid, but you also compete at a price. It's public procurement. So technical proposal, you can either compete with weight of technical proposal or the lowest price, and this was the lowest price. So we had to figure out how to offer the lowest price, and then every one of those 12 companies to actually get something that makes sense for them. So we did bid, and then the some overseeing agency, I forgot the name, found incomplete in the procedure, and they broke out the procedure. But I was so proud that we managed to beat, and we were the only other company. So there were two companies, and we managed to beat, and I was really, really proud because that was an exercise, I would say.
you love those kinds of challenges, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
When
I
people
mean,
tell
once
you
you
that you can't do something and you go and prove them, yes, I can.
Yeah, yeah, it's impossible is my biggest trigger, to be very frank. I don't know. I believe for you too. I kind of catch that. But, there is a difference, mathematical difference between impossible and improbable, right? And if there is a chance that is bigger than zero, you don't say impossible. It's improbable, sure, but you can play with those chances and you can increase them. So I really love playing with chances. It's a very nice game to play.
Yeah, but these people that like mathematics try to find the ways to make them possible, improbable, and then real. Yeah, I'm just like you. I hate having limits and like people telling you, "Oh, this is impossible. You can't do that. That's unreasonable." I'll show you it's reasonable. Let's do it. Let's prove it. It's like that phrase that they attribute to Henry Ford, like if a person thinks he can or can't do something, they're both right. So
Mm,
if you think you can do, you'll find a way. Or at least you'll discover a bunch of ways that it can't be done, and then you might find a way after that. Like Thomas Edison had like
yeah.
10,000 light bulbs that didn't work, and then he had the 10,001st and it did work. So I think it's an
That is a
exercise.
function of effort and time. And there are very few things that are impossible, right? For example, you can't bring back the dead, and from all the stories I've read and watched, you better not try to. But but there are things that are very, very, very probable. I do believe in the world that we live in. Practically only one company managed to actually keep the market, to keep the population, and that's Facebook. We are living in a time where you can talk to everyone around the world via your phone. That's enormous business potential. That's enormous money making potential, and really not that big of a competition because there is a work for everyone. So I really, really think that that alone, and then the creator economy, you can do whatever you like in it, given you put the time and effort, right? So I really do believe that. That's why I really, I talked to one creator recently, a YouTuber, and he told me, I still have to tell my father that I'm working a real job, right? Because the previous generation was very, and I got a bit angry, and I was like, okay, come on, how is that not a real job? You can make money from whatever today, from whatever. There was this lady selling what was air in a jar, so she's selling and making a business out of it. You cannot really imagine how how big possible have become compared to the era without the internet I had the chance to live for a little while. I
Yeah,
don't
I'd
know,
like
I'm
to know
rambling.
more
Stop me.
about your views on the creator economy and the future of business in general. But before we go into that, maybe you could talk a little bit more about how you transitioned from your tech job and starting to work at Parker Labs, and why did you make this jump? How did you meet Jordan? And maybe talk a little bit about what you guys do and how you help businesses and creators.
So I hired Jordan. This is how we met, and we have been having quite a click since day one. We understand each other perfectly well. We think alike, and Jordan practically was thinking to start his fourth startup because he failed three. Practically, I wanted to work with him because he was matching my speed of decision, my really desire to move faster, and we kind of tried a lot of things, a lot of offerings while starting the business. At first, we were thinking, okay, I have the business and the scaling experience because I scaled the company from zero to 70 people in our location, and there would have been more if there wasn't a pandemic and then war and then global crisis, whatever. So I'm really confident I can consult businesses how to scale organically or by mergers and acquisitions without really disrupting their culture, with high retention of their team, with really good leadership. And he was really good in tech, right? So he can optimize whatever process at least to be 2 times faster, and 2 times faster is the minimum. And Jordan spent 1 year testing every tool for online business there is. So when you start from funnel building software, then it goes to mail services, newsletters, automations, integration between those. He really tested everything, and we were like, okay, we can help businesses really. optimize their cash flow by automating their processes, and then building strong presence online and enabling their operations, and helping them when to hire, when to not hire, and stuff like that, which are quite important, because uh, I love how many startups there is, but most of them actually fail in the fifth year due to cash flow disruptions mainly. So lack of cash. And we were thinking, okay, let's do that. But when we started doing that, we talked to a couple of clients, helped a few, but it was the same vibe of the very careful, stagnant enterprise, that we were very tired of, because yeah. So we were like,
Very
okay,
Swiss.
yeah, come on, let's not. Corporate as a speed is really slow. It's those are enormous organizations, right? So these enormous organizations, they need a little bit of time to move, right? And we were like, okay, that is not really working very well for us, because we actually want to do what we build. We want to love what we build. And then a creator was referred to Jordan. Uh, he is a video creator, very successful, to help him with something in Notion. And we were looking at the request, and we were like, okay, this can happen really quickly. Then we were like, this person with that intention, he can make a lot of money very easy, right? Because when you have the attention, you have the followers, right? The huge following. You practically have two standard options. One is ad revenue. Ad revenue is like this. It depends on views. It depends on the change of policies of the platform, and sponsors. And with sponsors, I assume there are good and bad among them, and there are some of them who might wanna limit your autonomy to create and say, okay, you're making a video for my product, but according to my script, which is not exactly great, because the creator knows better how to address their own audience. The sponsor doesn't. If the sponsor could reach the people the creator could, they probably wouldn't pay the creator, because why would they? And we actually decided that the third option is to help creators stay close to the money, right? Because if they are doing cut revenue, if they're selling someone else's products, they can absolutely sell something of their own. And for that, you need the strategy, you need market fit evaluation, you need actually a whole bunch of infrastructure, you need to have a good offer, you need to market whatever you're offering. So we are helping with all that, and we absolutely love it, because those are the best clients that we ever had. So this is what we do. We actually help creators have more stable income and more options for making money with content, without really making more videos, because normally, to scale a successful brand with that revenue, you have to create more content. The maths make sense. If you want more views, create more videos. If you want more sponsors, create more videos, right? So having something of your own that you sell is practically a diversification. So it's making
Hmm.
it easier, because you practically build your course once, or your product once, and then you market it, and then it can bring you money for a long time. And I believe that on the strategic business and project management side, I am pretty qualified to help. And Jordan helps with the marketing side, the online, his entire vast knowledge of how online businesses work, and his skills to build an infrastructure that converts. That's it. That's what we do. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, of course. That's a great niche to target, I think, because, like you said, first we are starting to transition to a more creator or attention economy
Mm.
that's less based on working for a traditional company, a traditional big company, especially for the younger generations, the people that are 10 years old today that are 15 years old today. Many of them already have. I saw a poll once, and it was like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And one of the most, or maybe the most wanted profession was like YouTuber or TikToker or something like that.
Hmm.
And for older generations, it still sounds a bit absurd, but going into the future and with all the changes in society that will come with AI and all of the automation of labor, things will change a lot and very quick. And
Yes.
the people that are already moving the pieces to um, use this wave in their favor are going to have a massive advantage. So anyone that goes to Parker Labs in the next few years will have a massive advantage working with you and Jordan, I'm sure. And one thing that I think is very important that you were talking about is that when you depend on sponsors or an ad revenue, like you said, it both fluctuates a lot, and also you're prone to being canceled. If you say something that it's not totally politically correct in a certain environment, maybe you might be canceled. There are many cases of this happening with
Hmm.
creators, or they either out of the blue, and sometimes, okay, they really do say things that maybe they should be put out of some platforms depending on what they say. But there are instances in which it wasn't like they didn't really do anything wrong. And by having your own funnel, by having your own products, you have much more resilience and economic stability.
Yes. Basically, what can happen with a sponsor, because reputation is, I would say, reputation is also quite important in traditional business. People tend to underestimate it, but they shouldn't. But in creative economy, your reputation is quite a big asset. So what might happen, as you said, with the canceling part, is that you take a sponsor, you know, you love their product. I don't know, take a brand, whatever famous brand, your product, you love the product. So you love the product, you negotiate good terms, you whatever, but you affiliate yourself with them in front of their audience. And tomorrow they do something really stupid, like really the CEO goes and make, I don't know, a very, very controversial comment or whatever, and then you're already affiliated with that brand, you know? Currently, that controversy falls on you in front of your audience. And if it's big enough, and we love drama online, we love drama as humans, but you know, online is specifically important, then it's a big risk, I would say. A risk that can be mitigated if, you know, if you, as you said, have another tool for resilience.
And I'm also interested, while we're talking about this, how do you guys structure your time and how do you guys work? Because you're all of you work from home, right? Or all of you
Yeah.
are not in the same environment all the time. So how do you guys structure this in a way that's both efficient and you can be productive and like do you use Scrum, for instance, or the Agile methods, or do you have your own little system that you've created?
We don't really have agile scrum in the full sense of the word, so we don't do dailies because because it how to say, it doesn't make sense for the time being. But we have a planning session once per week with what are we going to do for the week, right? And then we just do. Normally, my day would be I write in the mornings, so I write now the first thing for an hour, and whatever is written, right? I don't edit the same day. That's very hard. I love to publish when I write something and then check it out. So that's my biggest challenge so far, to write stuff and uh, let it breathe for a bit before I edit. So currently, I'm writing for Medium and on Twitter. And then I would actually study copywriting, um, and for an hour. Then there is lunch break. hour or two, whatever we decide we have for the day. The afternoon is actually the time for clients. So the time then when we sit, strategize, look at our clients, look at the status, exchange, strategies, ideas, how we can help them or speed them up, depend on where you are, or slow them down because, some of them are really, really driven to go through this fast, and we have to say, hey, don't burn out just yet because you need a lot of work to do in the long run in our 6 months program. So and then from I would say 4-ish, 6-ish, we would take calls. We'd do lead generation, we'd do sales calls, and we would talk to our clients in our regular sessions, and that's pretty much the end of the working day. So this is how we both, me and Jordan, work. Eva has a little bit, Eva Chernobyl, she is our future head of marketing of our enormous marketing team, but for now she's really helping us. Executing on the marketing strategy. So for her is a little bit different because she's editing Jordan's shorts, and then she's writing different copy pieces which we have to review in the afternoon before she publishes. So in the morning for her is also creating. Everyone is creating,
Hmm.
but just from a little bit of angle. And once per week, all of the all three of us, we gather together either at our place or at Eva's place, and then work together, plan for the week, really have these interactions between each other to stay aligned. We use Slack very actively, I would say. We have very good organization of our channels. Um, all of us have turned off Slack notifications after work hours and until 1 during the day, because this is, how we by each other focus work. And yeah, that's it. That is how our work process looks like.
Oh yeah, that's great. Thank you for this because I have tried to do some um, asynchronous or not being together with the people work at times and had some difficulties, but I guess it's easier when you have people that are both self-starters and driven and organized.
Mm.
I think it's easier to do this because I was working with people that they're not bad people at all, but they weren't they're a bit ADHD, let's say. So I was the only one that's more has this
Focus.
more organized or trying to be organized mindset. So sometimes it was a bit difficult for me. But so you guys know a lot about focusing and about doing creative work, and that's why you have your routine set so you can do this first thing in the morning. And did you um how did you discover that this was the best part of the day for you, like right after you wake up to go and do your writing or to do the creative work for the other people that work with you? Did you like tinker around and try it in different times of the day and see what was best for you? Or did you just find out of the blue, or did you study about this? How did you find out writing first thing was the best?
Uh, Jordan is actually very much into productivity stuff for 10 years, I believe. So he read absolutely every book and followed every podcast, and I don't know. So practically, he said that the work that might require confusion, uncertainty is best to do in the mornings. But we knew that already. We were talking about this when we were working together in our previous company, right? So I just tested what he said, and it turned out that it was working for me because uh, we both knew. I don't know from where, but obviously when you lead a team, because Jordan was a people leader too in my team, so he had a team of 10, I had the leadership team and stuff. When you lead a team, you have to find a way during the day to be there for them, always be there for your team, but also have some chunks of focused work, right? So it's not always how to say, people would know our schedule and would know where is our focus work, so they wouldn't practically call us on Teams. They would practically, write a message, and they wouldn't expect quick answer during those intervals. So pretty much, it is based for me. It's based on previous working habits, and also on the, how to say, on the trust that because Jordan read everything about productivity, I don't have to. So so practically this is how we came up with the routine. And when the pandemic hit, we had to work from home. So Jordan was the only person with the experience of working from home in our team, and he gave us a little bit of how to structure our day, gave us good habits and stuff like that. I adopted those, and they work as habits, as rituals. And then I said, to people, look, you never have to come to the office again if you don't feel like. If you feel like you feel more productive, good, cool. We're keeping paying rent of the office. I'm just letting one floor go because it's never full and there is place for everyone, right? But then you have the office, you have the opportunity, or you can absolutely stay at home and come to the office whenever there is a client or your team decides to gather together or whatever, right? So, and because we had back then juniors, we had, more advanced engineers, we also had to focus on helping them build a routine that is not harmful for them at home, right? That they can feel productive without burning out, with having the necessary breaks, with having really the lifestyle that is required to build for yourself with working from home. So that knowledge, I think, very naturally, it's one of those things because we did all of that. We knew already how to structure our own day in our own business. I'm explaining this for the first time, and I'm not doing a very good job, to be very frank. So practically a lot of
No, I
a
think
lot of
you're doing a
a
great
lot of
job.
reading, and then a lot of experiments, and then a lot of helping people build the habits that let them be productive without, being burned out. And yeah.
Yeah, I think you guys have some perks that come from your tech background of trying to test things and see what works, what doesn't work, like experimenting, kind of like your dad's family that we're all scientists. So it looks like you guys have this feeling of trying things out and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, trying to improve. And before we go into some spicier topics like video games and anime and your TikTok, would you like to talk a little bit about the Tiny Big Biz Blueprint? I know you've mentioned some of the things you guys do, but would you like to talk a little bit about this?
I believe that you need to invite Jordan to talk about this because he can explain for 3 hours. But basically, the idea is that you can build a very, very profitable um, business without having to scale it too much, because business grow in teams, in number of people, and with the relevant teams if you bet on volume. Because what will happen if you're very successful YouTuber, you might be having a lot of sponsors. Then what do? You want to make more videos, but suddenly you don't have the time to do the whole process. So then you have to hire editors, then you have to hire, maybe script writers, even whatever, to help you with the process. And when how to say, when you start scaling volume and volume, the only way to compensate for the hard constraint 24 hours every one of us has in their day is to hire more people and to use their time. So the idea of the tiny business blueprint is actually to explore models that let you scale and make whatever, 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures, depends on the product, depends on your offer, depends on anything, but let you scale without really having to pay salaries, without really having to coordinate 10 more people in your day, without really having to grow in a way that is outgrowing your current capabilities, because this is a big
Hmm.
problem in every new company. At some point, you need to hire people to do the parts of the work that you as CEO cannot do or doesn't make sense to do, right? And by making sense, I mean monetary sense. But then you have to organize, then you have to structure, then you have to help people do their job. You have to coach them. So it's not really scaling based on volume is not really an easy thing to do. And then you have to pay salaries, or you have to pay. And if you want people to stay with you all the time, then you have to make sure that they get money every month. If you want people to work for you exclusively, or to be their first priority when you go and say, hey, I'm dying here, can you edit 20 videos, whatever, then you have to make sure that you pay enough. And those are already cuts from your hard-earned money, from sponsors, from ad revenue, and then it's a matter of calculation of how much you make versus how much you can pay and how much you overcompensate with your effort. And I don't like this journey that much, because I think that successful creators deserve more than to be burnt out and hate the thing they actually, do, because they love the autonomy and love having the time and love to be their own bosses, right? So this is what the Tiny Big Blueprint business. I even managed to say it wrong, but this is what this is about, really, how to scale in money without scaling in number of people, and without relying on volume of content. That's it. I don't know if I
So
explained.
helping turn it from a hobby or a solopreneur to becoming an actual business, but at the same time, with minimizing the amount of people, you will need extra people, but with automation and other tools
Yeah,
that can help you be more productive as a creator
yeah,
or as a small business. Something like that.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Don't get me wrong, it's okay to hire people. It's okay to scale with people. But nailing the timing of this is hard. So I would suggest to anyone, any business owner who thinks of hiring people, is to make sure they can give them money each month or each 2 weeks, I believe it's in the US, whatever, regularly. So because otherwise it's a very disappointing journey. Imagine you become, I don't know, very big, one of the biggest names on X, right? And you say, hey, Diana, come on board. I need you to, whatever, manage my DMs. And I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited. Now I can get to know Gabe and work with Gabe and everything. And in 1 month you're saying, um, yeah, sorry, but, this month I cannot pay you salary. And I might even decide to stay, because let's say I don't need the money or whatever, and I say, okay, never mind, you can postpone. But on the second postponing of the payment, or on the third, I will be thinking, okay, I love the guy, but I cannot stay with him, and I cannot prioritize the work for him because I need to eat, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. Hire people, but make sure that you can pay them. And of course, you can minimize those risks with freelancers, and that is perfectly effective and good option to go when you do that hiring. The only risk I do see is that you will vibe with an editor, and when you hire this editor once and wants to work with him again, you would want to do it now. And
Hmm.
in timing perspective, you might not to, because if the editor you love is freelancing for someone else, right, at the time, you are back to practically square one, having to look for a new editor, explaining your views, your ideas, whatever your creative process and your do's and don'ts once again. So this is the risk that I see there. And the Tiny Big Blue business blueprint, whatever, practically lets you have enough income and enough money to scale in a way that you want to scale, and you're not forced to practically break relationships with people, or restart relationships with people, or constantly talk to new people you don't know when you have to trust them, right? It gives you the benefit of focus on actually what you do well, creating and making money out of creating. So yeah.
So it's kind of like a map that helps you um, go from a place where you're beginning and you do everything yourself, and then you start trying to outsource some of the things you do, like editing, like scripting, DMing. But at the same time, like you said, one of the most heartbreaking things for a business owner is to have to let people down or tell them, look, I can't pay you. And I think, especially in the beginning, well, anytime really, it must be very do anything they could to not have to have this kind of conversation because
Right.
they even feel a bit like they're a failure and they're failing their
Yeah.
employees and their partners, and
Right.
like they know that their employees or the people that work with them have families, they have to eat, they have to pay their rent. And
Mm.
by having a blueprint and by doing it in a way that's more sustainable in the long run, it certainly helps.
Sustainability is quite important for business because, as you said, this is the most heartbreaking thing that can happen to you. You know, I'd rather not eat for 1 week, but don't. Uh, but I will pay you a salary, and I believe that a lot of people think like me, at least in this economy. So yeah, that's how to say
And
that. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
sorry, I cut you.
No, that was I was going to say. So the Tiny Big Blue Business Blueprint is practically a roadmap to scale your business in a sustainable way. Let's say it like that.
Awesome. And since you have a lot of experience both being a leader yourself and also working with other leaders, do you have some tips or some frameworks to help with people that are starting to become leaders or starting, like, they're not an intern anymore, they're not a first level employee anymore, they're starting to get up on that ladder and maybe they have someone that they lead or they have a little team and
Mm.
going into larger teams. Do you have some keys to leadership or a little blueprint to becoming a new leader?
Oh yes, I do actually. But this is how I scale new leaders. So if you are a new leader that is put in the position of leading a small team, the first and crucial thing I would advise you to do is to find a mentor or a coach that is an experienced leader. This mentor or a coach has to be somebody you trust. So because there are a lot of emotions that come from new leadership. You would feel insecure. You would feel, the hell am I doing? This might be the wrong decision. And it doesn't get better. You would never be certain you're doing the best of your team in some cases, but a coach and somebody who can, with whom you can run, vent, and actually who can share what did they do in similar situations, how it reflected on them, on the team, might help enormously. So first, find a mentor and a coach with experience. Talk to individual members of the team one-to-one regularly. Ask them how you can help. Be very careful not to promise to help with things you can't help with, but help as much as you can, because the only way you win the trust of a team is by helping them. If you try to position yourself as, hey, I'm the guy who is giving you the tasks, that would be a disaster. Don't do that. Ask them very regularly how you can help, how you can unblock, how you can really, really contribute to that team, where they do see you as the biggest contributor, and then work to actually fulfill the vision of the team for you. And the third tip was always ask very frequently your team for feedback, and then listen, and then tell them, look, I will change this. No, I'm not going to change this because whatever the reason, but ask them for feedback as much as you can, especially if you're a new leader. And if you don't punish people for giving you feedback, that should go without saying, but don't punish people if they say you suck. Some of them will do. Don't give them the cold shoulder. Don't punish them with behavior. Don't punish them in any way or form in your relationship with them, and don't you dare punish them with anything administrative, or don't abuse your power, basically. But once they kind of get the trust that they can give you any feedback and it will be addressed in some way or form, be very specific, that increases the trust and that increases the level of conversations that you have. And whenever you don't know what to do, ask your team. They might. That's also very important. Have a coach, have regular talks with the people one-to-one, help them, ask them for feedback. And when you don't know what to do, ask your team to decide as a team what you should do. So these are my tips for new leaders. If that
Yeah,
makes any
that's
sense what I'm
awesome.
saying.
Like being open to feedback from your coach or from your team, being better at communicating, asking them their points of view or the things how they'd like to go forward. And of course, you need to take things with a grain of salt. You're the leader after all. You need to look at all of their perspectives and see how you can move it forward. But how would you deal with conflict within your team or conflict between other teams? Maybe because when you're a leader, many times you have a boss who's above you, who's leading teams that work in parallel to you. So other departments that you have to work with that might be your internal clients or internal suppliers as well. So how do you lead with these conflicts when they arise?
If you're the leader that doesn't have the ultimate leverage, right? If you have somebody that has bigger leverage than you, right? How would you handle those? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. In both cases, really. Oh, when you're like in mid-level, and then when you rise, what changes when you go to a more senior position that you have more leverage and more power as well?
Nothing changes. They are still people. You still need to talk to people. So practically, practically what I have seen in my 15 years of career as a leader in IT is the following. People rarely are in conflict about why something should happen or what should happen. They absolutely and always argue on how it should happen, right? So the first job of a leader, any leader, is to remind them of the goal, of why the hell they're working together at all. And then there are different techniques, right? To deal with a conflict. You can play the common enemy. You can say, do whatever, but in 1 week I want this result. And once you give them a common enemy, they hate you. And when they hate you, it's hard to hate each other because it's kind of so. So you can try that once or twice. It works. Not perfect. You cannot use it every time because then you will lose the trust of your team. But you can just say, it's your conflict. I want this. If not, imply or else it can solve. The other strategy you can use is to act as the facilitator of the conflict, right? So you can put them in one room. You can practically take the context to the ways of the solutions, and you can make them think in pros and cons. So in the end of the day, after this exercise, probably they will converge on something, because when you ask people to go step by step together over something, it's also very hard to disagree, right? And then at some point they will hit the boiling point. They will be like, yeah, and here, and then you have to intervene and say, okay, but there are still two approaches. Both are valid approaches. If you think that are valid approaches, let's look this one and let's look this one, and let's really talk pros and cons. Let's talk risks. Let's talk whatever. And the final strategy that we rarely talk about, but it's also valid. You can try, right? You can absolutely try it. But conflicts are not between departments. Conflicts are between people. And if, you try to make them hate you so they can sort out their disagreements, and then if you try to, reason and apply logic so that the emotions that were boiling, a day ago, give that emotions a day to sink in a bit and to cool off. If that is not working, and if these conflicts are often, then you might rotate one of them of the assignment. Whatever, there are different ways to make that choice, but at some point, for the team, for the project, it will be more beneficial if there are not always two people who are, fighting on
Hmm.
each and every meeting, because it destroys the atmosphere. And what I really want to tell new leaders is that conflicts are very, very normal part. Very normal part. So I like to explain the phases of a team with the Avengers, right? It's like every Avengers movie. They have a problem, they assemble. That's called forming. And then, of course, everyone is a superhero and has their ways. And practically everyone starts, saying they're the only person who is right, and there is sulking, and there is drama, and there is conflict, and there is whatever. That phase is called storming. And it's up to you, the leader, to design and to facilitate communication in a way that doesn't occur. And then finally, when you solve two or three of the pain points problem, they go into the norming phase. So everyone is okay. We still think we are right, but our big problem haven't disappeared. And from then on, they practically learn to work with each other and enter into the performing phase. So you have to be prepared that conflicts will occur. Don't banish conflict. Conflict is very useful tool. Instead, instead of banishing or avoiding conflict, I wouldn't recommend avoiding conflict. Just make sure you facilitate it in a way that it doesn't become ugly. But because of conflict, and I deliberately designed my leadership team to be probably the most diverse team ever. Because of conflict, we made so many good decisions. And it wasn't easy. It's not easy, but I do believe that if you want to innovate, if you want to really make good decisions that reflect all the perspectives, then you have to enter conflict. There is no other way. In my experience.
Awesome. So the leader must be more of a mediator than anything when there's conflict and try to find the optimal solution to, like you said, the first job is to remind them of the goal and then to steer them in the right direction.
Yeah, and make a decision who should go if this conflict is constant and uh, counterproductive. That's it. Go from the project, go from the company, go whatever. It's still your job to make that decision.
And do you have any tips in high stakes negotiations like the ones you used to have with the enterprise companies like Microsoft or those big guys? Do you have any tips for people that have to deal with those kinds of companies?
Interesting. I am writing an article on negotiations right now because I do. So practically, again, negotiations doesn't happen between organizations. They happen between people. So first of all, you need to be sure that you're talking to the right person. You want to talk to the person who makes the decision, the person who, not the person who is practically a glorified messenger for the person who made that budget and make the decision. So you need to find those people. And how you find those people is you really befriend the first point of contact that you have. You go on site, you drink coffee, you gather contact, because from those contacts, from those lunches, coffees, whatever, informal time, not in a meeting, you will know practically who are you talking to, and should you talk with somebody else, and should you ask. My second tip is, normally those people you negotiate with are not the enemy. Negotiations is not about bargaining for money as a sleazy salesman. Negotiations is about having a conversation and making informed choices with the ideal goal that both sides and exit the conversation happy with their choices, right? So you are aiming for a win-win. So practically do whatever you can to win the trust of your point of contact, to win the trust of other people you need to talk to. Be very transparent. Don't try to push your hidden agenda. If you're there to get money out of them, then say it. Not really, hey, I'm going to ask you for your money here, but make it very clear. Don't really go and drink coffees and be ambiguous, and then on the meeting ask them, I'm here to ask for your money. We will buy from me, because they will be like, okay, that's why you were so friendly now. It's a bad thing. And then ask a lot of open questions. So when you negotiate about money, what do we want to achieve from our whatever working together? For example, if it's a sponsor, if you're negotiating with a sponsor, you can say, okay, what is your goal from working with me, right? And here the context. You definitely need to ask for their budget, because just because they announce the price to you doesn't mean that it's a final price. You can ask them, okay, how do you normally pay? What are your payment terms? Because when you negotiate, there are two things that are quite important, right? One is the money that you will get, but people severely tend to underestimate when you will get the money. And crippled cash flows are not really a nice place to be, because, I owe you whatever, your monthly rate, your monthly rent. And then the landlady comes and say, hey, Gabe, where is my rent? And you're like, yeah, Diana will pay me in 70 days. So could you please wait until then, right? You don't want to be in that situation. So negotiate the when the money will be there. And my final tip is, answer power plays with power plays. Power play in negotiations is basically when whomever you're negotiating with says take it or leave it. This is what I'm gonna pay you. These are my payment terms. This is your work. Take it or leave it. My final offer. And I would absolutely suggest that you don't take it. It's very hard, but I would say walk away. Walk away from anyone who tries to force you into money agreement without leaving any space for discussion. And it's very funny, when you walk away, you have two options, because I have walked away. Obviously, I was like, okay, that's brilliant from your side, but that deal doesn't look good to me, so bye. So they either very eagerly reopen the conversation, which now is a conversation, right? And you can ask and exchange context, or you have the time to find someone who you will work better with. So no deal is absolutely allowed for you to say. You can say as many times as you want. Don't really let people pressure you into saying yes on things you don't feel are fair to you. Explain why it feels unfair, give all the context, right? But don't really let somebody act high and mighty on you and say, okay, this is my last offer. Okay, if that's your last offer won't do. That's it. Let's move on. So yeah, and have
So
options.
if someone tells you to take it or leave it, you should always leave it then.
Yes.
Even what if it's one of those suppliers that, in most cases, that's not the thing, but there are cases in which you only have one possible supplier and they know about this. Or even the opposite may happen. You have one possible customer and they use it to force their suppliers to a deal that is not as good for them. For instance, here in Brazil, there's a very famous, well, beverage company, Ambev, that's IB InBev in international terms. They have labels, and the founders, they wrote a book in which they not only they tell the story of the company, but they also tell some of their negotiation tactics, and they are appalling. It's ridiculous. They're like, okay, like you said, you ask them for 15 days to pay, then 30 days, then 45, then 6 months, and they're like paying the guy is like 1 year or 2 years even sometimes after the supplier has made
And
like
that makes
supplied
sense.
them with the
Let's
thing.
boil.
And
So,
how do you deal with that kind of situation? It's
you don't put yourself in it at the first place. So, uh, this is brick and mortar, with the beers and everything. So, and it's outside of IT, and IT is quite also service oriented. Uh, but if you have only one supplier, for example, and you don't have other options, then you build the product yourself. Then you build what you need yourself, right? If it's buy, or if you're in a situation where you have to buy, then there is a question to buy or build. You can, it's real life. You can put up with some very bad terms, let's say, but for a period, right? For 3 months, you say, okay, we enter into this deal, but only for 3 months. And in these 3 months, you practically use the time and build what you need, so you never have to deal with those people again. But what I'm trying to say is that I find it unlikely that there are no other options in the creator economy. I really find it unlikely. And you know, if you are into a situation where you're when you're forced and pressed to make a decision, you can always pivot and change the game as well, right? So I still say no and no deal, because the other side still have to find somebody else, right? And while they're finding somebody else, they're also losing money. So there is leverage in negotiations. Negotiations leverage, but leverage means another thing. In but saying no is really the ultimate thing, because nobody can force you to sign, and they will try. There are companies that will say, "Oh, this valid is offer only until tomorrow. Please do sign." Okay, what happens after tomorrow? It's an artificial deadline somebody invented, right? The day after tomorrow, would they give you a higher offer? Probably. You still can refuse it if you refuse this one. A lot of tips in negotiating, but saying no loud and clear, and not letting people pressure you is the biggest skill that you have to deal with. You need the confidence, and you need other options. That's why, coming back to what we talked about, that revenues and sponsors. If you have your product on the side, any income that would give you the space to breathe a little bit. You know, if you're negotiating with one person, even if you don't have the product on the side, make sure you can contact three more, and then you can compare conditions and everything. If one of them is an asshole, hopefully not. You know, have options. Always have options. Never go to negotiations with only this and only option in mind. And if it's a monopoly, in the case that you are addressing, I'd rather really change the niche or change the business or whatever. So then put up, because have in mind that in creative professions, because software engineering is also a creative profession, and creators, autonomy is quite a driving factor, and sacrificing your autonomy for somebody to boss you around is a choice you don't want to make. At least I wouldn't make one.
yeah, I think you put it perfectly when you said that sometimes you put yourself into a situation and you have to figure out how to not be in such a situation in which you don't have options, or a situation in which you can't walk away, or at least you think you can't walk away. And since we're talking about the creator economy, we need to be creative and try to find ways of getting out of those situations or finding better situations, better outcomes, better win-win situations. But I think we've talked a lot about business, about leadership, but there are some quirks of yours that I think are very interesting. For instance, your TikTok, where you give some tips on business, but using anime references, and also you are a video game lover and you always talk about video games and how they've shaped you as well. So, do you want to talk a little bit about these hobbies of yours?
Probably, how to say, relatively late in my career as a human. So it was just before the pandemic. But anime practically started with me writing for a local website. Back then, I was playing a lot of video games, and I was helping a friend to branch out from a very popular online site, women's site here in Bulgaria, and she created her own. And I was writing articles for her side blog, whatever it was, and she was like, "Okay, Diana, can you please, because now it's a very male audience that's coming to our site. Can you please double down on that because she saw some stuff." And I was like, "Okay, what else fun could I talk about?" And I tried to practically compile a list of where you can buy um, t-shirts, t-shirts branded by, like QWERTY, t-shirts that
Mhm.
reflect your hobbies practically. So while doing that, I found some anime related reference and I decided to check it and I decided to watch the anime, and the anime was called Death Note. And I remember I was streaming it and in my home. I started watching 10 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. I was still watching and I'm like, okay, good. I need to go to work in like 2 hours, right? But yeah, so that was the only anime that I was watching back at the time. And then I watched the first season of Attack on Titan, and then I was very disappointed because I never knew that new animes actually are not, let's say, are not finished yet. So yeah, and then the pandemic hit, and I watched everything, everything. So every weekend I would watch a new anime, and I so much love that. I so much love the medium. I love the stories. I love the arcs of the heroes. They're a little bit different by the standard. I love the dual. I love everything. So, I mean, I'm really crazy on when it comes to anime. Um, and I decided to teach leadership back then as a hobby because I was like actually helping my partner who was a creator, and I'm like, okay, let me understand your process. So for 6 months, I believe, I posted one video per day on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts just to get used to this filming and then editing and then publishing process. It was a complete failure, from channel performance and everything. But at least now I have a very good understanding of the creative process, the process itself, not how to make it better, not how to succeed with videos, but how does it how does it feel when you do it every day with your hands for a period of time. And why anime? Because I really teach. Once I started actually watching that much, I started all my presentations were with anime reference and anime characters, and a lot of people in the office did watch anime. So some of the concepts that were very dry and abstract, I would explain in the office with anime. People loved that. They really loved that. They were like, aren't you going to make a lunch talk? Let's, dissect an anime and learn a little bit about decision making or negotiations or whatever. Yeah, I actually had a presentations about negotiation that was Kakashi themed all the way from Naruto. So this is how I decided. And about games were really funny. I started playing in high school because I kind of really loved to read about battles as a kid. A kid with non-curated library would read about battles, and I knew a lot of military strategy by age 13. So so it was very funny because my classmates came to me and said, Dianice, this is how they called me back then. The German language class is beating us at Counter-Strike. And I'm like, okay, show me this game. Show me what it looks like. So I started playing, it hooked me, and I never stopped ever since. I played Counter-Strike I played Diablo 2, 3, 4. I played a lot of Overwatch when it came. I played World of Warcraft, a lot of games, quite a lot of games, and I played tons of other games I don't even remember playing because my Steam library is like this. So yeah.
So you do have a bit of an obsessive personality when you like something. Like you told me that you were watching Death Note until 4:30 in the morning and then playing
Yeah,
Counter-Strike and other games till 2,
yeah,
3 in the morning.
yeah. That's how the rule was born. Whatever you do, binging or playing games, for 4 hours of doing this, you owe yourself 1 hour of exercise. That's my rule. This is how I stay healthy over the weekend.
Oh, so at least you do your exercise then.
Oh, I do. I exercise every day actually. In the evening. Now I moved it in the evening. Before it was first thing in the morning. 2 years ago it was first thing in the morning. Again, because first thing in the morning has the biggest chance for you to finish it. But now I was thinking, okay, the habit is established, for 2 years, so I can move the exercise in the evening. Because in the morning I'm fresh. I want to write. I have tons of ideas. I dreamt in tweets,
Hmm.
whatever. And it's not difficult to build a habit to exercise in the evening, but I do. I actually have 1 hour of exercise in the evenings. Might be walk with the dogs in the park, might be some other, might be swimming, might be whatever, but I cannot live without moving. That's a very, very sad way of life. And I'm not a fitness sis or bro. I'm not really how to say, I'm not really a preacher, but I I won't tell you, hey, exercise if you want to be healthy or whatever, but I know that I can't be healthy if I don't exercise. So it's very, very important activity in my day.
Yeah, exercise is awesome, especially if you want to do something that's very creative or that you have to sit for a long time in your computer or writing or doing
Mm-hmm.
whatever you have to do. It's very good to exercise and to get some blood in the brain and some nutrients in the brain so you can have better ideas. Don't you think when you're walking with your dogs or exercising, or sometimes you get the best ideas when you're doing those things that you're not really thinking?
Yes, the best ideas come after that. The best ideas come during swimming. Swimming is the closest thing I found to meditation because I know meditation is very trendy nowadays. I applied some breathing techniques to cope with stress back then when I was back to back in meetings and people were asking help, and my day was obviously a chaos as an enterprise CEO. Now I don't need them because I'm really, really not stressed. But when it comes to exercise, the best ideas that I would ever have is in the swimming pool while swimming. I would normally swim 2 kilometers, so 1 kilometer freestyle and one the other style, and those were the best ideas that came from. While I'm walking in the park, I'm yelling to a beagle to stop harassing people who are holding food and stop running. So it is it is relative success for having the best idea during a walk in the park. But when I come home, I'm fresh and I really have good ideas too. So I do agree with you.
No, at least you have some good stories to tell about your dogs running at people.
Yeah, he's a crazy nice doggo, very lovable, very kind, very cute. He adores people, but then he also adores food. And if there is a food, he will try to get it one way or another. He's not dangerous. He's not barking at people or anything, but he'll be like, "Give me the food, give me the food, please give me the food," and then he'll start climbing and dirtying them. Yeah, I have to walk in the park with a beagle is a special adventure, and yeah, the other dog is. If I was walking only with him, I would probably have the best ideas because he's old and he's very calm and everything. But then the beagle is an adventure, yes.
At least he helps you be able to celebrate.
Oh, he does, he does. Wherever he picks on my mood um, so naturally. I don't know if dogs can smell the hormones and everything related to emotion, but sure he picks it. And when I'm happy, he's like wee, and when I'm sad, he's like. So he mimics and participates in every emotion that I have. It's very funny. And
Yeah, I'm
as I
not
said,
sure if it's the smell or body language or both, but they are very good at this.
yeah. Plus, he's
And
the only man who jumps, 20 minutes from joy that he sees me. So yeah, 20 minutes by the. Hey, you're here. Where have you been? Practically before sitting, with you, I had to cool him down a bit because I was away on the government work, and it was like, yeah, she's home, she's home, she's home, and I was like, chill. I have to talk to people now. Yeah,
yeah, they always
dogs
make
are
this
awesome.
little party when we come back.
Yeah.
And do you think it's more fascinating the nature of dogs or the duality of human nature?
Mm, dogs are amazing, but I believe what humans can do is deeply, deeply more fascinating. Um, I've seen a person offending greatly another person in the morning, helping greatly, at noon, and then grumbling to somebody else in the evening. It never seems to charm me how vast is our potential for good or bad. It's really amazing. That's why I love anime, by the way, because they show it pretty brilliantly to the duality of human nature. And I came to believe that we are not good or bad or whatever people. We are just people, and the choices we make can wildly vary in our day unless we are mindful of them.
Yeah, that's why we need to swim so we can do our meditation.
I said it's the closest thing. I didn't say it's a meditation, but it's the closest thing to what people described meditation should feel like.
And I know it's not that long ago, but what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Oh, I will tell her to quit smoking. I started smoking in school to look cool. I'm very, very ashamed of that. And getting rid of this toxic, unhealthy, terrible for other people habit is really, really difficult to me. Now I vape. There is still nicotine in what I vape, but yeah, this I believe I will tell, look, stop smoking now because Diana, 10 years away from you, practically brought hell to herself and everyone around her when she tried to quit for the first time. So yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah, it's very difficult. I was very irritable, and I was going, the hard style. I don't need nicotine patches. I don't need anything. I can tell myself that I could quit, and I did quit for a year. But then I was very, very unpleasant to people who were around me in a moment where I wanted to smoke. So yeah.
But now you did, and now you don't smoke
No, I
anymore.
didn't. I
Uh,
actually, I actually once Philip Morris invented this cute little IQOS thingies. I bought one. So the smell is less, and the potential health harms are less too. And now I got their newest version, which is as if you're breathing really air, but there is still heated tobacco in the cigarette itself. So I didn't stop quite, and this is something that I'm not proud with, to be very frank.
well, maybe this year is the year that you
No,
finally. No?
no, no, no. You have to have guilty pleasures. No. I don't want to ditch nicotine at all for all time because yeah, I have other things to focus now on.
Other things to fix first. So, Diana, this has been amazing. It has been an honor to have you here, and I'm sure that everyone that's watching will have a lot of value from this conversation, a lot of tips on leadership, on how to negotiate better. And before we go to the final moments, I'd like to ask you a question that I always ask everyone that comes here, and they give me the best of answers, and I'm sure you will give us one of the best answers of all time. So, what's
No
your
pressure.
definition of success?
Success is basically when you do whatever you want to do, whatever and whenever you want to do, obviously without harming others, without worry or guilt. This is for me how success is defined.
Yeah, and that's something that you do a lot. You can hear it in your tone with your writing. Like you don't give a shit what people are going to think. You just want to do whatever you want to do or say whatever you have to say. And I think it's very refreshing to see people like this.
Oh, thank you, Gabe. But I think that we are quite similar in that perspective, aren't we?
Yeah, maybe that's why we resonate.
Yeah, yeah. Because I also feel that from your questions and from your reactions, I also feel that you are not the one who will go people pleasing or whatever. You just need to bring value and do whatever you can to bring it. And I believe that's why I love to have you in my network and on my timeline. And I'm really, really grateful that we met. Really grateful. It's been quite a nice. All our exchanges were very, very cool. And I believe that you know a lot about the topics that you asked me to. Maybe you should interview yourself, or I don't know, but you know a lot also on how to transform for the better and how to be successful. So please talk more about it when you have a host that it's not taking all of the airspace from you. So yeah.
Oh no, definitely. Thank you for saying that. Likewise, everything that you said right now, it's pretty much the same sentiment that I have for you and for the stories and for our interactions. And no, don't worry. I'm set to do a few more episodes that I do solo. So I'm thinking of doing one solo episode and one feat episode
Mhm.
with a guest every week. So like on Monday the solo and then on Thursday the one with the guest. So in these ones I'm thinking of talking more about all of these things that we've been talking about. But when I have a guest on, I like to try to pick their brains and think about the things they like or the things that they have experience on, the things that they're good at. And of course, in your case, there are many things that I also like myself, so it's even easier, I guess. But I usually try to steer in the conversation that way, you know. And thank you for coming. And do you have anything else you'd like to talk about, like some something that we didn't touch upon or that you would like to leave our audience with before we go and or something that you like to plug, maybe about tell people to follow you at the Cynical
No,
CEO on
no.
Twitter and
I
on
was
Medium.
no, no. I was going to tell your audience Gabe is totally awesome. Go follow him, interact with him, and listen to those podcasts because I am a boring and can be overwhelming person, but he has quite a lot of to offer and quite a lot to say. So really, really follow Gabe on Twitter, and I don't know, he's a pleasure to talk to. That's what I wanted to leave your audience with. So really. Tell now your
Oh,
Twitter handler. I don't know it by heart, and if I check, I would be like, so yeah,
yeah, it's at Gabe Ottaviano. That's
yeah,
so I'll leave the link on the description so it's easier
yes.
for people to think. But thank you so much for saying that. And I don't think I think you should also follow Diana because she's awesome at the Cynical CEO, both on Twitter. And is that your name on Medium as well, or is it Diana Elenkova?
It's Diana. It's Diana on Medium. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll leave the links for both, and also anyone that's trying to scale their company or to their their brand as a creator, you should also check Parker Labs and work with Diana and Jordan. And thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This was the cynical CEO herself, Diana Elenkova.
Thank you, Gabe. It
So
was
I